Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, to the Road to the Master series. This is the episode number 74, in which I will start the analysis of the Cracovia Chess Festival. Today is the round number 1 of such tournament. I have played it around a month ago and it was a very strong tournament, one of the strongest I've played in a while, so I couldn't wait for it, and I guess now you cannot wait for the analysis, right? So without further ado, we'll start covering the first round and we'll discuss what happened. So even though the tournament was a very strong one because the lowest rated players were 2100s, I was in the top half of the starting list, and it meant that in the first round I will be playing a lower rated opponent. But you know, 2150 is not as bad. Obviously it's a tough challenge, especially with black pieces, especially since it was a 14-year-old kid. So with those, you never know. I chose e4 e5, trying to go into some, you know, complicated, strategically Ruy Lopez type of position, with the hopes of outplaying my younger opponent, and he went indeed into the Ruy Lopez, and I was expecting mostly the main lines. However, after a6, bishop a4, knight f6, he chose an orthodox knight c3 line. Already as of now, I was out of my opening, let's say, preparation, because it is not one of the most common moves. Actually, it's one of the rarest at high level. I believe that nearly 1% of the games goes like that, so not that many as you can tell. And obviously it's not the most challenging way of playing from white, but I guess there are some nuances, some ideas behind it. I myself chose a similar setup a few years back, but without proper knowledge how to do it with white pieces, let's say. I just saw it once online and I decided to try it out. I am not sure how deeply my opponent prepared this line, but thanks to the fact that I have played it too few years back, I kind of knew that I can simply not care as black, in a sense that I can continue development as I would normally do. So I have played bishop b5, hitting the bishop, play bishop e7, after castle I castle. So basically I'm playing the very same moves as I would do in the main line, and the difference is white's setup. In here, the general idea is that when you have the main line, the pawn is on c3, allowing the bishop to escape to c2 if bishop is attacked. As of now, this bishop has no squares, so my idea would be to play knight a5 and exchange it. Therefore, a3 was the move that my opponent chose. Already as of now, I was kind of tempted to go for the knight d4 move, because if you remember the very first videos of the Road to FIDE Master series, I tried to play some martial gambits in those games, and you know, if my gambit of the e5 pawn would be accepted, I might be playing knight b3, cb3, bishop b7, d5, with the ideas that I have the bishop pair, I have the better pawn structure, I have both bishops looking at the king's direction, so you know, this martial vibe is on the board. I kind of wanted that to have. One thing though at this very moment was that my opponent was still playing very fast, and it usually indicates that he was in his prep, so I was not that sure if knight d4 is that good anyway. Therefore I decided in the end that I don't want to go into some prep without knowing whether it's working or not, because tactically speaking, even if you go for this position, it's kind of hard to evaluate for sure is it okay or not. So I decided to go for the calmer approach of d6. Simply, as usual in the Ruy Lopez, h3 was to take control over the g4 square, and even though I've talked about this bishop before, that it has now the square to jump away to go away to, I played knight a5 anyway, followed by c5, because I wanted to solidify my space advantage on the queen side and also get some more control over the center. And on top of that, I remembered the game when I played with white pieces in this type of scenario, and I remembered that my opponent went for this specific idea, followed up by, after d3, bishop e6, with the attempt of exchanging this bishop, because you know it has wasted so many tempos that exchanging it as of now would make those tempos simply not worth it, at least in my eyes. So those were the moves, and this was the setup I chose in here too. My opponent correctly played with knight d5, and I mean correctly because he's not yet allowing me the exchange. And the whole idea of this variation from white is to now follow up the knight d5 move with the c3 one, and then try to undermine my advanced pawn chains either with d4 or b4 or both moves actually, depending on the scenario. And the only thing I have to, let's say, evaluate, calculate and choose is to take or not to take with the bishop or with the knight. And it felt like taking with the knight might make some sense because after ed5, yes, my bishop is not that great, but let's say I just move it back. This bishop is not that great either. So I thought that, okay, maybe this was the way to go. But still, if not d4, then the c4 or b4 ideas are in the air, let's say. So I was not sure if this bishop will be that stuck forever, and I felt like, all right, maybe this is the type of scenario and structure that my opponent have practiced and prepared. I didn't have that experience, so I decided that I want to delay taking on d5, maybe for the future, maybe I will not do it ever. But yeah, depending on what's going on, I decided to jump back with knight. I mean, the knight did its job, kicked away the bishop and allowed me to have the control. Now I go back, you know, maybe prophylactically preparing for those pawn pushes. To my surprise though, c3 move did not occur on the board. Bishop g5 was played. In here, opponent finally started to think because he has some things to think about. I mean, c3 was obvious to me, but on top of that, he can try to exchange there or there. So plenty of implications after both exchanges, some strategic work to be done. So yeah, those were the moves I would consider. Bishop g5 came to me a little as a surprise because now it seems like bishop, yes, it's kind of putting the pressure towards the diagonal, but at the same time, if I now exchange on d5, this bishop seems like not that useful on g5. So this is what I did exactly. So bishop d5. Please note that there are some tricks with discovery attack like knight d5, bishop e7, knight e7, and now we have one more piece. However, the problem was with that variation that after ed5, still I'm hit there and there, therefore the bishop on g5, yes, it can be taken, but I will not get any advantage. So for those reasons, I did not go for the trick, I just simply took. He took back and I've played knight b8 move. I was kind of proud of it because it's not that usual and normal to go back to the original place, but obviously it's due to the fact that all the other squares were actually either taken or significantly worse, so it was not that tough of a choice. Knight d4 I considered for not a good amount of time, perhaps wrongly so, because if my opponent took, I was unhappy with basically either of the takings, but imagining that this is the position that happens, we both have the bishops. My job is to evaluate this situation, and yes, at the time the bishop is not that great, but I felt like with some pawn, you know, pushes, I don't know, some pawn levers, this bishop might go out at some point. I couldn't evaluate it properly. Objectively, I'm okay here, even maybe slightly better, but I just didn't feel like it, so I went back to b8. He exchanged on f6. Kind of makes sense because the position gets somewhat close, but to give the bishop pair away so fast, so early, I was not sure about this choice. So yeah, as you can tell, I was happy with my choices strategically. I was unhappy with opponent's choices, meaning that I would have played differently than him. And this is exactly the kind of game I wanted, right? The strategic, long battle with the younger guy. And yeah, this is what I've got. He took c3, and I felt like at this point I have to be better. I have a little bit better pawn structure. This bishop, if he would manage to go like this and that, maybe he's alright, but I doubted that really. So I was happy with the proceedings. After rook e1, usual move, natural move, I played g6, you know, maybe making way for my bishop, maybe preparing something on the king side too. He chose a4, and I was proud of the move I chose and the idea in general, because I played a quiet move, rook a7. The idea of that move is that if the position on the queen side will get closed at any point, because maybe I will decide to close it down, maybe opponent will do that, the rook has a nice lift through the 7th rank towards the either center or the king side if my pawn would be pushed already, let's say. And on top of that, if the position will remain unclear, I have queen a8 possibility, trying to have an eye on this pawn, trying to have an eye on this open, maybe file. So yeah, I liked rook a7 quite a lot. After bishop b3, somewhat logical, I played queen a8 anyway. Knight d2 was the move from my opponent, trying to take over the outpost on e4, but it's not the outpost for long. And in here I have plenty of moves. I can try to maybe even play king g7 with the idea that if the knight goes there, I can play bishop e7, cover the pawn, push f5. This king lift, let's say, allowed my rook to go through the h rank to the h file, maybe, whatever. I can do quite a lot of things because thanks to the fact that I am so stable in here and obviously in here, king side is my way to go. Opponent does not have such a way. He does not have a clear plan. And to be even trickier, let's say, trickier, I decided to play not king to g7, but rather bishop g7, kind of saying to my opponent, come on, jump to e4, attack my pawn, because it seems on the first glance that yes, I am basically blundering something, because after knight e4, which fortunately, at least at that point of the game, I felt so happened in the game, I have f5 move, completely abandoning the pawn, because the idea is that once the knight takes, due to the pawn chain of mine, it has nowhere to jump back actually, and with simple queen b8 I am hitting the knight and taking it basically. So this was the trick I saw, I executed, my opponent fell straight into it. The problem is that after f5, knight g5, I have weakened e6 square forever, and I should not have done that. Therefore, instead of bishop g7 trying to go for this, let's face it now, stupid trick, I should have gone simply with bishop to e7 kind of the idea, because then I am not inviting this jump, so it may not happen, so f5 would not be as powerful. But this was my, let's say, thinking process, because after knight e4, f5, I am covering this square, not allowing this weakness to be, taking advantage of. So that would be the difference. But, d4 is incoming. So in my eyes, in my mind, it all made sense. But yeah, apparently it's not that great for me. I misevaluated this situation strategically. So it was kind of an unfortunate event because I saw something that my opponent have missed. And not only did it not make my position better, but arguably it made my position weaker. So not the desired outcome. Anyway, let's see how did the game continue, because as you can tell, just looking at the position, I might say, okay, I am better, but it's not that easy to know what to do. And with this bishop and the pawn and the outpost for the knight, opponent now has somewhat a clear choice of what to do. He would like to open the e-file, perhaps make as many exchanges there as possible, plant the knight there and tell me, yes, you are more advanced, but you are unable to use this to your, let's say, ideas. This would be his choice, I guess. Therefore, I decided that I need to act quickly, and I went for bishop c8, running away from the fork and threatening with c4. And even though my opponent played queen e2, trying to fight against it, because I have only two pieces that are protecting c4 pawn, he has 3 that attacks it, I just went for it anyway. I decided that I cannot wait any longer. I spent some time in here trying to debate, okay, is this as bad as it seems, or can I allow it? Should I play against it, or should I invite it? Those strategic nuances were too much for my head, unfortunately. I couldn't decide what to do. And yeah, as usual, as you know from the previous videos, from that week and the previous one, if I don't know what to do strategically, I go for something forced. So c4 it is. The whole idea of this pawn push is to indeed sacrifice a pawn, but in exchange for it, I want to get the great outpost on c5 with a tempo to the bishop, with having an eye on e6, with having the idea of planting the knight maybe here or there, and so on, so on. So this is the general idea. I saw one variation of which I got, let's say, scared about, but I figured, okay, if my opponent finds it, let it be. Like, we'll see how it goes later. And it was a very hard move, I guess, to spot, rook a3. What is the idea behind it? The idea would be to, first of all, obviously protect the bishop. And follow-up of mine of taking, and then trying to take here would end up with some rook b6 ideas, hitting both my weaknesses, and in general, the opponent is taking over the open file. It's not that good outcome. I did not go for the queenside push to make his position better, right? So if I will not take the bishop, then the very interesting idea of his would be to try to double stack on a file and open it up at the good moment. And still I am a pawn down, so it would be uneasy for me to navigate it. And if I remember correctly, after knight b3, rook b3, no, I didn't want to take on c4 with the rook. So yeah, I am not even sure what did I have planned. Maybe it was just a YOLO kind of thing, and well, wherever he will not find it. But yeah, not an easy position by any means, and I really am not sure what I have planned. But let's just ignore that fact. Thankfully, after knight c5, my opponent went for bishop c2, which seems like a natural way of playing because bishop drops back, covers some entry points for the knight, and the rook does not have to protect it. So all in all, logical stuff, but tactically I am great because after bc4 that I can now play, I am taking back the pawn that I have sacrificed, and the pawn is cannot be touched because of the discovery attack to the knight, and I'm gaining some material. Interestingly though, my opponent could have played something like this, and it's not that easy to evaluate what's going on, because if I now go for the pawn, there are some bishop b3 and rook c8 combos with the pressures all along, but yeah, it's not necessary from white. I mean, it's necessary, but still worse objectively. So anyway, and this was, I guess, not on his radar. After bc4, he just chose rook a to d1, usual, let's say, stuff. And at this point, I felt like, okay, the situation on the queen side is as I wanted it, meaning that the b file is open to the weakness on b2, but opponent has no control over it. So for the further future, I am perhaps having some opportunities there. Also, this pawn is untouchable, so I should be fine in the center. And if that's the case, I am basically a little bit better on every side of the board. The question is now, how should I proceed? I have decided that I would like to go with the rook e7 first to for sure know that knight is not coming in here. And I thought that at this very point and moment I stopped any play from the opponent whatsoever. And I am free to do anything, to hit the pawn, maybe to push e4 and plant the knight on d3, maybe choose some other stuff, but the point was that I felt alright. To my surprise, my opponent have played a very powerful move that I have just simply missed, because yes, he is lacking the ideas, therefore he might as well get a little bit crazy and push g4. This was basically the only pawn in my position that he is attacking outside of this one. But since we established that this pawn could not be taken, it was logical somewhat to attack that one. I was just simply not expecting it, because it's not that common when you are better strategically that opponent can go for some kingside attack in front of his king. But in here it was indeed the most powerful option for him. I cannot take the pawn. I mean, I can do it, but I don't want to, right? Inviting his queen and opening this diagonal even further. So I decided to push the pawn as previously planned, but after gf, queen h5, my opponent gets some kind of the counterplay, and the position gets kind of complicated. One thing I was not happy with is that we have not reached yet the 30th move, and as you know, usually time control, meaning the additional half an hour to think, is after move number 40, so still more than 10 moves to go. And on top of that, when I played the c4 move few moves back, I had only half an hour on the clock, and I spent half of this time on this very move. So at this moment, with more than 10 moves to make, I had less than 10 minutes to go, and the position got kind of crazy out of a sudden. I did not expect it, as I've said. So practically speaking, it's not a good position and situation to be in, even though objectively computer says that I am better here, here, and there in here. Because let's face what problems do I have. Obviously, the pawn is hanging, so I can either try to push it or just move the bishop. I decided to go for the other option of bishop e5, opening up the rook and also making the position of the bishop better. This is what I thought. My opponent continued with the best, yet another continuation, king h1, a quiet move inviting heavy pieces along the g file. My problem is that with this king I am fairly opened, and those pieces are not helping that much. So this is the problem I had, and indeed it's not that easy what to do. I decided that I want to resolve my issues with my king by attacking his king in a way, because I've chose knight d3. Hitting the rook, hitting the pawn with some forks, also having the possibility of knight f4, hitting the queen if I needed that too. So this knight is so powerful that obviously opponent has to take it, and I now have crucial decision how to retake the pawn. I believe the logical way of doing things would be to take e d3, but I disliked the fact that my pawn chain, which would be in other variations so amazing and would guarantee me also some counterplay in any given moment, let's say, in here it's kind of disrupted. So even though yes, I have the solidified passed pawn, and this pawn is weak, and the queen being there means that I might have some problems. I didn't like queen f3, solidifying that pawn, attacking this one, allowing this. I just couldn't find the idea for future me how to continue, and apparently it's not that easy indeed to play for me. The problem is that in the other variation I am just simply not holding the position tactically, and this is the difference. So in here king h8 was the best move, similarly to the king h1, right? Both kings want to step up from the open g file, and then ideas of rook g8, sorry, maybe rook g7 too, and the queen also wants to kind of go into play. And I don't care as much about the pawn, because it would, let's say, make the opponent waste a tempo, and also there is the weakness there, so at least I can try to take back the pawn. So all in all, I misevaluated the fact that yes, this pawn is weak, yes, I would not have this amazing pawn chain, but it's still simply better than what I've chosen, because after cd3, rook g1, I cannot play rook g7. This was my, I guess, biggest miss, because in here there is knight h7, and I cannot take it with the king, and I cannot take it with the rook either. So I am just simply not like lost in terms of the whole game, but I lost a pawn in front of the king, my last one, and the other one is missing, let's say, I mean under the pressure. This exchange with further rook coming into play is on the menu. So yeah, this is the move I missed from the distance, and if so, rook g7 is not working, and if so, like, what can I play, right? This is the problem. And I had to play king h8, after which I am nearly, guys, checkmated, because after knight f7, there is the checkmate indeed, but thankfully I can give up my rook for the knight, but it was not desired outcome just 2 moves ago when I considered cd4 or cd3 or ed3, what is better. So yeah, after simply 2 more moves, I am without the exchange. Yes, I got this beautiful pawn chain, and I got this beautiful bishop, so I can still fight, but with such king, with exchange down, you know, it could have been, let's say, easier for me. Also, I wanted to add that my opponent had a very interesting inclusion that I kind of saw, even though I missed this very move previously, and it was f4. What's the idea? First of all, it blocks my f-pawn, so this pawn should be taken. I don't really want to do it that way, because then, yes, I take en passant, which we all like, but then rook d3 comes, and once more my pawns are simply disrupted and weak. And if I take the pawn with the bishop, then knight f7 comes with yet another threat of checkmate on those dark squares. And if I cover them with bishop going back, this is the difference. I've wasted 2 moves on my bishop moves, and after queen f5, my pawn one by one is falling, my pawn chain is falling, and I'm losing the game. For that reason, after f4, I would have to play bishop f6, and this inclusion of the 2 moves would make this specific variation simply better for white. As of now, my bishop is weaker, so I guess it should be that color. My pawn is blocked, this is weaker too. So yeah, and this would be the cherry on the top, the chef's kiss, this f4 move, but it was obviously very, very hard to even consider that when there is such a beauty of a simple check on f7. So how did the game continue? I took, he took, I played rook f8, obviously to, at least as of now, bring the rook kind of into the defense, but also, let's say, to the attack. After queen e6, we are on the move 35, so still 5 moves to make to go, and I was under 5 minutes on the clock. So it's not that easy to evaluate and navigate this position, because if we consider this bishop as a good one and this rook also as a good one, the question is, should I try to make use of those pawns immediately and start to push them, start to maybe create some passer, or since this queen is bad one, can I try to activate it like this, or maybe some other way, maybe like this, or maybe since the cooperation of those two pieces is alright, maybe I can try to leave the rook and go for the checkmate. Plenty of very deep choices and calculation to execute. With no time, I couldn't do it properly. So the future 5 moves will be somewhat chaotic in a way, because I chose to play f4 with pushing the pawns, making the pressure, whatever. My opponent interestingly solidified the d5 pawn so that the queen can go anywhere it wants. Very practical decision. Now I chose to play queen a7. First of all, stopping c5, because c5 as an idea would be an attempt of undermining my bishop, right? And I didn't want to allow it. Second of all, covering 7th rank. Third of all, hitting the pawn as I wanted to previously. Funnily enough, queen a7 actually kind of invites c5. I mean, it's just crazy computer line, but I thought it would be a funny inclusion to our analysis, because I said that I want to place the queen there to stop c-pawn from pushing. The problem is now that after rook c1 I am hit, I have to go anywhere, and even if I go there, so I have collected 2 pawns, I am losing because of my weak king, and yeah, it's just simply too much around it, and I am losing. My opponent is escaping the perpetual checks, because after this he can play here, 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 and sherry on the top. If I go f3, making the case of me winning the game, there is brilliancy. Queen takes e5, d5, rook f8, because obviously this move unfortunately came with a check, so I am checkmated 1 move before I got to checkmate my opponent. But as you can tell, crazy 7 moves deep line in which white is winning only due to only moves, but yeah, still a funny inclusion. Yeah, and it just shows you how many different motives and forced lines are there in the position. My opponent obviously humanly just chose queen h6, usual stuff. As I've said, the pawn is solidified and actually no longer attacked, so the queen is mobile, it attacks the rook, right, and threatens with something. In here I chose to drop back the bishop to g7 and hit the queen, ask it a question, where does it want to go, and I was kind of inviting my opponent to take on d6, because then at least I would not feel the pressure along the g file, along the 8th rank, so for a second my king would be alright. And then I wanted to execute this queen f2 idea, which looks somewhat scary. Obviously the computer screams it's winning for white. I don't care about it. Humanly speaking, it was very powerful and I guess scary for my opponent. That's why he did not go for the queen d6. He yet again chose a human way of playing queen g5. We are on the move 38, so 3 more moves from my perspective to make. Less than a minute to go. Yeah, and in here I played a bad move. It felt, my body screamed that it's not a good one. And I cannot tell you guys why did I play it in the end, because there is this rule of thumb that you don't push the pawns, you don't make any unnecessary moves on the side of the board that you are weaker on. So obviously I'm weaker on the king side, right, with all those pressures. So I should not move the bishop, the pawn, and so on. I played h6. Weakening the square around the king. Is it something concrete as of now already? Perhaps not, surely not, but for the future, I don't know, I had less than a minute to go, right? So when you have so little time, it's usually good to go by those rules that you know. I knew it and I still went for this move. I cannot tell you why. Perhaps I was lacking other ideas, but now it seems clear to me that queen f7 move might be a good try, because it further solidifies everything around my king, making the bishop more flexible. Maybe the bishop would be able to go back to e5, maybe take the pawn, maybe go to d4 to hit the other, whatever. Perhaps, practically speaking, it was a better decision, but yeah, I chose h6. And after queen g6, I played queen d4. I felt I am so, smart by hitting all the pawns, creating this practical pressure to my opponent. The problem was that I was the one under a minute, he was not. He had like more than 5 and it was the last move of him to make. And on top of that, move number 40 is incoming and I have missed his move, which was f3, undermining my pawn chain, and this queen on g6 unfortunately makes his ideas much easier. And now I have played a move with only 1 second on the clock and I chose unfortunately the move e3. All other ideas were simply worse in my eyes. If I take, those are the doubled pawns. If I don't take, I am taken and this one is blockaded, this one is isolated. At least after e3 I still have some hope because this is the, as we know, protected passed pawn. Maybe it will guarantee me at least some counterplay, but I've played this move with 1 second on the clock with heavy heart, or however you say it in English, because I knew that rook takes d3 is incoming, and after queen b2, this king is not the best in the world, but it kind of should survive. I am an exchange down. I don't have this amazing pawn chain anymore, unfortunately, and this one lonely pawn is not that much to guarantee me any positive outcome, I guess. But, half an hour was added, I was there to fight, so let's see how did the game continue. He opted for c5. At this point I was missing plenty of ideas and choices due to 2 reasons. First of all, fatigue. I was simply tired after those many hours of playing, because as of now we were hitting around 4-hour mark, so after a few months without playing it's kind of exhausting. Second of all, White has just simply so many routes to winning the game that I didn't see all of them. I just see some of them, But yeah, c5 is one of them, trying to break through with the pawns and push either of those towards the promotion. I just chose rook g8 move, trying to, protect my bishop and make my queen able to move. My opponent took the pawn. By the further continuation in the game, and we also commented on it, we talked about it later on afterwards, we established that c6 would be better move. I will not disclose the reasons why yet, but you will see it in a second. But anyway, cd6 is fine too, it's not like it's giving away the advantage. However, though, I have queen e2 now, hitting both there and there, rook and the pawn. If the rook would be hanging, I take it and I'm happy. If the pawn is hanging, it's not really about the pawn, but rather some perpetual checks ideas. They are actually not there, but if white wants to be precise, maybe it was a smart decision to not allow them. So he played queen e4, and look, I am dead lost. Let's put it simple, right? My queen cannot be any better. My rook cannot be any better, it has to protect the king. My bishop, what can he do here or there? Not that much, right? So yeah, I decided that I can go for some tricks because it's the last thing in the world that I have. And I, started thinking, sitting like this, because psychology is a thing. It's not like we are 2800s, stone cold faces, with no emotions, pure calculation, pure skills, wherever. We are human beings enjoying chess at 2200 level, and I hoped that after those 4 hours my opponent would also get kind of emotional and tired, so I played on his emotions with those tricks, and I played with like a side bishop f6, whatever, you can win against me, right? Because why am I saying all this? It's very, very, very easy at our level to spot that after rook g8, king g8, queen g6, I am hit there and there, so the bishop is lost due to the double attack. Easy peasy. I guess even if you are much, much lower rated, this might be the very first thing that comes to your mind. Because if I would like to, after this exchange, protect the bishop, I have just wasted 2 moves, right, on the bishop moves, and d7 is coming, second queen is incoming, checkmate is incoming, and I don't have any perpetuals, because if I take here, then queen g2 simply, and I have no more checks. If queen f1, please remember to not play like this, because then actually it is indeed perpetual, but yeah, simply king h2 is enough. After this, that king is safe, queen is incoming, I am losing. But I had a trick in mind. Takes, queen g6. Obviously my opponent, looking at me being, you know, this tired guy, he just went for it very fast, even though he had plenty of time to think about it. And I will do the trick of showing you the eval bar as of now. As you can tell, it's +8. And I just went into the corner, resigned, you know, like very, very sad and so on. And he took my bishop, as he was supposed to do. And bam, 0.00. What is the trick? What happened, guys? Well, the whole idea of mine was that when you think about this position, yes, you can kind of resign and not fight anymore, stop fighting and make some moves that I call the slow death, right? Slowly dying and then resign in 4 moves, whatever, and that's it, go home. Or you can, you know, fight with some very last tactical tricks. What are the tactical tricks in here? Well, the only one I guess I have is this one connected to the perpetual check, because king being somewhat opened in the corner with my queen being active, you know, it may happen, right? Some perpetuals. The only obstacle in my way is this rook. So the idea of exchanging the rooks was natural to me. At first, though, obviously any bishop moves is simply losing, because my opponent can, as we've seen also, exchange the rooks, place the queen on the g-file and so on. And this queen on the g-file type of thing is the most important part, because when we consider this, and that, firstly we covered that move, after which the queen remained on the g-file, remained at defense of the rook, and also is helping with the king is possible, and with white to move d7 is just simply too much for me to handle. Alright, what happens after this move? If he takes now the bishop, the idea of mine was to play king h7, and all of a sudden I am not giving away any entry point for the queen along the g-file, and if so, it's not easy for the opponent to go to the g-file with a check, with a rook defense, with the king defense, right? This square is missing from him, and g-file in general is missing from him. So if he decided to give me a check, I would go here, check, check, you know, this changes nothing. The only idea of his might be to go to f5, and if I go to g-file, then he can check me in any given way actually, because even if he cannot check me on g6, he does not care as much, because he does not care about the rook. All he cared about was the second queen that is incoming, and the fact that he can cover the checks with the queen, because now, yes, I'm losing, right? So this is it. This is the whole idea. And the way to go for white is really simple, really, guys. And this is the lesson for you. If you are winning the game, if you have so much time on the clock, please check what your opponent is trying to do. Because I did the old trick, the old guy trick against younger guy. Just give him material, let him collect it. Maybe he will just get too excited, overexcited, and he will miss some trick. Because after this, and that, very simple way of winning is firstly taking the pawn, then giving a check. If I go back, we saw that before. And if I go here, after the check and king h7, difference is very clear. In the game, I still had the pawn. In here, I would not have the pawn. And it makes white's position easily winning, because you can check once, check twice, cover the g-file, and then start pushing the pawn. White is winning. And it did not happen. My opponent at this moment took on f6 with the speed of a lightning, and only after king h7, when I went from sitting like this to sitting like the boss, he realized my trick, but it was one move too late. Even though he spent like 10 seconds on the move beforehand, now he spent like 10 minutes thinking what he can do, but there is nothing you can do in here as white to win the game. And yeah, this is how I saved the game. Obviously, still plenty of moves to go ahead, but I wanted to amplify it, that I survived the position that you saw in the thumbnail. So yeah, the game continued like this. He gave a check, I went back, he played queen g6, but as I've said, without a check, without a tempo, and this tempo should have been used to push the pawn. If the pawn is not pushed, I can play like this. Check, king h2, check, queen has to cover. Now I take the rook because I have the time for it, and after d7 I am taking that pawn and I'm keeping an eye on that one. Amazing stuff. My opponent did not push the d pawn first, he played queen b2 check first. I played king h7. With king to g8 you have to be cautious because after this, this and that there is a check, there is the promotion incoming. So yeah, this might be a problem in here. Thankfully it's a crazy draw because I can give the perpetual eye like this, but I obviously did not want to allow that. So I played king to h7, not allowing those checks and promotions with a tempo, right? And that's it, guys. Like, he pushed, I took the pawn, I have the total control. He tried to give me some checks, but they are simply not working. He checked here, I played there, he checked here, I played there. And I believe that the most obvious way to go for a draw for him, although am I even right? I was thinking about this move with this idea, but now I see that I can give a check and be, even though I am second with promotion, I am winning due to the ladder checkmate. So okay, maybe indeed he was not playing that badly, but my point is that all of a sudden, since I have the control over that pawn, and this pawn is an protected passer, as we've said previously, my threats are kind of bigger than his. And that's funny enough. So the evaluation switched completely. It's still 0.00, but I have the initiative. So yeah, continuing. He gave a check. I went away from all the checks in the world. He now went away one square to his left, because after I took the pawn, he had a check on e5, collecting my f pawn. But like, look at this, guys. Completely equal in terms of amount of pawns, but when you compare this and that one, it's clear that mine is much better. On top of that, I can give a check, I can give a check and push e2. So I'm very close to a win. Unfortunately, the win is not there, because while my queen is occupied with the pawn and is trying to protect it and make the push to e1 possible, my king is really weak and it has nowhere to hide. So my opponent, you know, could have checked me in plenty of ways. He chose the most obvious, the most correct ones, and even though if you analyze it with the computer, it tells you that the moves that he made are the only ones, human-wise, they are also the only ones that you even consider. So yeah, queen e4 was apparently the only move, queen c6 was the only move, but all the moves are very natural. Queen c5 is 2. The general idea is that my opponent, if he should not allow me to the queen side too easily, I still have a route to go there. But after I go king to f4, queen c4, king e3, he can now start checking me in such a way that he is kind of trapping me in a box with my king, and the queen's positioning will at all times allow him to somehow get the pawn. I'm not sure if it's that common in the such queen endgames to get such geometry, because I have never studied queen's endgames in my life, so I'm not really that sure. The point is that in here everything worked in his favor. So as of now, obviously I don't have anything to do outside of going to c-file. If I go here, he can just give me a check, and that's that. The game ends in a draw. So king c2 it is, queen c4 check, king b1, queen b4 check, and the problem begins. If I play queen b3, first of all, I had to calculate what happens after the exchange, because king of his is very close to mine and this pawn is running away. Thankfully, I've calculated that I am the one winning, because in here, this is the outside passed pawn. If you ever studied the pawn endgames, you will know what I mean. So this pawn will distract opponent's king. It will have to go there, while my king will go there, and then it will be much closer to that pawn. And this one will be the winning one, let's say, in the shortcut. So that's that. But after queen b3 check, there is queen d2, hitting the pawn. If I go back, he goes back. And the biggest problem as of now, that after king a2, it seems like I am this close to winning, but king f2, simply going here to help with the promotion situation, and I'm kind of out of moves. This pawn is protected, this pawn is protected, like what can I do? My king is kind of stuck. That was the problem. Because as long as I keep the queen on d1, king f2 is never a possibility because I can give a check and promote with a check too. So this is the dilemma of mine. I cannot effectively cover my king with my queen without making my pawn weaker, my promotion possible, let's say. So yeah, I had to stick to the king. I played king a2, queen c4 check once more, king a3, queen c3 check. And the problem is that if I now take on a4, which normally was my idea, he can check me. If I go up, he can just take the pawn, forget about the threat, and then check me all the time in the world. No way of winning for sure. And after king a5, simply check, check, nothing to do either. Therefore, after queen c3, instead of going back and repetition, I chose queen b3, once more inviting my opponent to the exchange, because it's the very same position in which I was winning the pawn endgame. But my opponent played a very good move, which was queen a1 check. And now, after queen a2, I am losing. I always tell my students, when there is a pawn endgame possibility, because you are exchanging the bishops, the rooks, the queens, the knights, whatever, anything basically, please evaluate the pawn endgame as deep as you can, because pawn endgames are harsh, are very direct in a sense that they are either winning or losing, usually by one tempo, and nothing you can do about it. You just need to do your best before you will go into it. Because the difference is that now the exchange would have happened on a2, not b3, so I am one tempo away from the pawn, and not really about that pawn. It's all about this pawn, because now my pawn will be taken, and if I start pushing my king, marching with my king towards the f pawn, the difference is that now he can push. If I try to run towards it, this pawn has survived. That's the real problem. And he can take away the square, and that's it. This pawn will be enough for white to win the endgame, funnily enough. So, going back to this position, after I covered the check once, I couldn't do it twice. I had to go to b4, and bad news, queen e1 check takes my pawn. And this is the scenario I talked about. My queen was unable to help my king effectively. Still, I went for it because I felt like, all right, I have this, outside passer. Maybe it will be a chance to win. But after a few more moves, I didn't realize that maybe it's even a little bit worse practically for me, because after a5, f4, some check, king g3, my king, at least in my eyes, had some difficulties in progressing with the pawns forward, because there is nowhere to hide basically from the white queen checks. And I felt like this king with this pawn has more possibilities, because I don't have that clear route to check. If so, he may try to push and so on. So after king b4 check, king b5 check, king c5, f5, I decided, yeah, I don't want to play anymore. I had enough, 80th move we are approaching, 5.5 hours of playing. I did not expect it, and neither did I want that on my very first game after coming back to playing after a few months. So I decided, okay, let's finish this. What is the easiest way to draw? And you will not believe this, I decided that the easiest way to draw is to give up the pawn, funnily enough. After f5, the diagonal has opened, therefore I need to be, let's say, worried about the double attack. But I've decided, I don't worry, I don't care, I will just push the a-pawn as a decoy, inviting this attack, because after king d6, queen h6 check, king e5, I maneuvered my king from there to there with the idea of attacking those pawns, and now the opponent is unable to win the endgame, even though I gave this pawn, right? So he checked, I went away, he took my pawn, I took his, and we agreed to a draw, because obviously this is just far too little to win the game. So yeah guys, after the analysis of the Polish First League that you watched throughout the last 2 weeks, none of them lasted more than 35 minutes, I believe, or 40. This one is over 50 minutes, and it's all because it was so long of a fight, so complicated of a fight with, hedgehog scenarios, let's say, and roller coaster evaluations. So amazing game. Obviously, after such a fight, I was more than prepared for the future stage of the tournament. Kind of tired too, but at least very well warmed up. So that's a good thing to have after so many months without playing. About the outcome, I know I was better out of the opening and I felt I am a better player overall. In the time trouble, unfortunately, I've blundered here and there, so I got myself into a losing position. And to be honest, I deserved a loss. So even though I was playing a lower rated opponent, I was happy with this half of a point at the start because, well, it could have been 0, right? So you need to always appreciate what's coming at you. In here, the draw came to my hands due to some old school tricks, and I will take that. I knew also that it's not like I will be playing lower rated opponents all the time because the tournament, the competition was so packed with so good players that I felt, okay, 1 or 2 wins in the near future, I will get back on track playing those 2400s. This was my idea, this was my hope, and yeah, this made me more of a okay type of feeling about this game than mad, right? So I was not mad, I was okay. And yeah, this is it. Amazing stuff. If you liked the game, if you liked my analysis, if you liked the trick, if you liked the survival from the position on the thumbnail, please remember to leave a like. I will highly appreciate it. And if you want to see more of the games from this tournament, and I guarantee you there are some pearls, amazing stuff in there, please remember to subscribe, and we'll see each other during the analysis of the next round in the few days. So I can't wait for it. I will see you there. Thank you all for watching this one. Bye bye.